Since when did going to school become optional? Well, apparently in the last few years since the pandemic. That's when absenteeism has soared here in Minnesota and across the country. Many blame pandemic policy of online schooling, but we are not looking backward. We are looking at what's happening now and what can be done in the future.
Now, this is Talking Points on CBS News Minnesota.
Good evening and welcome to Talking Points. How bad is the absentee problem in our school? Well, let's look at the numbers. Chronic absenteeism is defined by missing 10% of school days in a given year. According to state figures in 2019, chronic absenteeism in Minnesota was at 14%. In 2022, that figure more than doubled to 30%. Among Black and Latino students, 40% of students are now chronically absent. For Native American students, that figure is about 51%. Is it surprising then that test scores are down with only 50% of Minnesota students reading at grade level in 2023? Tonight in Talking Points, we'll talk to people looking for solutions, from a county prosecutor and county official looking for better ways to handle truants to key lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. Let's start with Ramsey County Attorney John Choi, who is on the front lines of getting kids back into the classroom. Well, joining us right now is Ramsey County Attorney John Choi. Thank you so much for doing this for us.
Well, thanks for having me on, Esme, and this is a really important issue, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's just start with that. How big a deal is this? How big a problem is it?
Well, something happened during the pandemic, and this is not an issue that's just localized here in the Twin Cities or the state. This is the issue that is affecting our entire country. Across the board, school districts are reporting that they're having a problem with chronic absenteeism. I mean, of course, the reason why I care about this is because I have a statutory responsibility to work in collaboration with my school district partners across my county, as well as our social services agency in the county, to ensure that the truancy laws, which require kids to be in school, right, are complied with. And so, our take on all of this is I don't think that a punitive approach is going to work. But what will work is when community and school districts can get the resources that they need to tackle this issue. And so we work a lot in partnership where there will be some sort of an intervention to say, hey, your student has been missing school beyond the set amount of days, 15 days or more usually. And then usually the behavior will change. But sometimes what we find is that a lot of families and kids need help and resources. There's something going on at home. And so oftentimes the school district or the county can do an intervention. And then, of course, the last resort is to bring it before a judge. But I think the solutions very much are in the school district and in our community.
Let me ask you, first of all, what happens when a police officer picks up a kid that's just walking down the street that obviously should be in school and finds
Yeah, that's another issue too, Esme, is that I think we've got this issue where you just have like kids who just may not be attending school enough, where it's clearly like more than 10% of the school year. And there are a whole bunch of issues associated with that, but with services and supports, and just a reminder that you need to come to school, that can do it. That can solve that issue. But the schools need resources to do that. Another issue is that there are kids that are in school, but they're not in class. And our teachers don't have the time. They got to be teaching. So school districts do need more resources to have more adults who are good role models in the hallways talking to the students to get them back into class, right?
Well, now, that's fascinating, because I hadn't heard that before.
Absolutely. This is a big problem. A lot of kids that are in the bathroom, maybe vaping or whatever those types of things that they might do in there, that's a problem. And then another big problem is the kids that are just completely disconnected to school. They've disenrolled, and we don't have a mechanism by which, because everybody's really busy, to go out and actually find these kids. And so oftentimes when our police encounter a young person who should be in school, the police, especially if it's involving like a carjacking or an auto theft, the police will ask, where do you go to school? And the response invariably always is, I don't go to school. And so we need to get that right because I think getting kids connected to school, to positive adult role models, which is a place where school, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a school building. It could be an area learning center or just something to provide that structure, to provide that connection is just really, really critical. And we lost something during the pandemic. We got to bring it back. And if we do, I really believe that we can also solve some of the bigger issues going on in our community.
Well, you're getting right. You anticipated my next question, which is from what you see, because you see the really bad stuff and the real tragedies in your community and our communities. How often is it when you find a young person connected to a murder, a carjacking, one of those really serious, terrible crimes? How often is it that absenteeism is a factor in that?
And I think absenteeism is not the right word. It's completely disengaged from school.
Okay.
And it's almost always. And
Almost
so,
always.
yes. And so I think that the things that we can do to engage our community and our social services to just go out and have conversations and connections with these kids, as well as the people that love these kids. There are parents out there they need help. It's difficult to be a parent of a teenager, and especially if your teenager is defiant and you've lost all control and you're working other jobs, you've got other kids. This is not easy, and so providing the services and supports in a very targeted way can make a world of a difference, and we can avoid, I think,
Yeah.
kids getting involved in more serious types of activity
Well,
like criminal behavior.
well, let me ask you quickly because we're almost out of time. How often do you see a link between the kid that for a long time was just chronically absent, that missing 10% of the school days, to somebody who is completely disengaged from school, as you said?
Well, I think it's kind of like a ramp up. You start with being chronically absent, right? And then that means that that's probably there's something going on. There's a sign there, a symptom, or an opportunity for engagement. And if we could do it then, we're going to stop this the next step, which would be the complete disengagement and engagement with bad behavior, criminal activity.
John Choi, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insights.
Thanks for covering this issue, Esme.
Up next, we'll hear from a Hennepin County official on how Minnesota's largest county handles students who are not in school, and also from DFL Senator Steve Cwodzinski, the chair of the Minnesota Senate Education Policy Committee. Well, joining us right now, Don Ryan. He is a program manager with Hennepin County's Safe Communities program. That is a joint venture with the City of Minneapolis and also the Minneapolis City Schools. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. First of all, is absenteeism a big problem in Hennepin County?
Yes, it's a significant issue that we're dealing with nationally, but we certainly see the impact here in Minnesota.
And have you noticed an increase since the pandemic?
Yes, the focus that we have at the Youth Connection Center is not specifically on absenteeism. We do try to work with youth regarding truancy, but our focus is really to put preventative services in place to hopefully discontinue or not begin any sort of criminal activity that youth might be involved in.
All right, if you could just walk us through, let's say a kid is picked up on a Tuesday at 11 a.m. in Hopkins. He's 15 years old on a charge of he was throwing paint at a fence, damaging property. What happens to that kid?
Yeah, it's a great example. So the YCC, the Youth Connection Center, works with youth between 10 and 17 years old. It's a completely voluntary program. It's something that we found benefits both families, youth individually, and law enforcement because it provides law enforcement a safe place to bring youth when they may not be able to contact a family member. Lots of times it's an interaction of a lesser criminal degree. Property damage might be a good example of that. and we offer services to the youth based on what's important to them. For example, we look at what's happening with the family, what's happening with the environment that the youth is in, what's happening in school, and whether that youth is successful. And we try and tailor all services towards what is important for that youth. So it's a very person-centered approach. We have a partnership with a community agency, The Link, which is a terrific agency, and they do great work providing services to youth.
Yeah.
And
Let me
they
ask you, with the increase though, do you have enough people, resources to deal with the number of kids that are out there
that is
and not
always
in school?
yeah, that's always the problem. Is we can always use more resources to serve the youth that we have and the families where the youth are in.
And this is a physical center in downtown Minneapolis where people are brought. Do you have some success stories?
Yes, we have a number of success stories that we report and we have on public spaces, but we have youth that have participated in our case management program for 15 to 18 months. And they went from reporting that they felt desolate and alone to graduating and some of them moving on to higher education past high school, which is absolutely fantastic. I
Absolutely
really
fantastic.
credit the, go
Well,
ahead.
sorry, we're running out of time though, but that is absolutely fantastic what people are looking for. Doug, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Nice to talk to you.
Joining us right now is Senator Cwodzinski, who is the chair of the Education Policy Committee, and also you're on the Education Finance Committee for the Minnesota Senate. Thank you so much, Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Esme.
All right, let me ask you, what is going on with these attendance rates? You were a teacher for 33 years.
Yeah, boy. They're through the roof. I mean, we could go through the statistics and until the end of the day today, but bottom line, for some reason, and I think there's a myriad of reasons, students don't feel like many students don't feel like schools the place for them to be. And I think what we've lost a little bit of is students at one time felt like I had a sense that there was a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself. And that's why kids went to school, because an eagle or whatever might be the case. And I know that one of the things that I'd love to have happen is if principals on the first day of school at their big assembly, welcome back to school, called down from the bleachers, said, okay, the football team, come on down, girls softball, debate, chess club, all the activities, come on down, and down to the floor of the gym. And if students that were still up there, not belonging to anything, and then that principal would welcome them to come down and join one of these activities, I think that'd be a great start of the school year, because like I said, I think some students have lost that sense of purpose. And I'm not blaming COVID or I don't know what to blame.
Well, a lot of people say that it was in the COVID years. No one's blaming COVID happened, but they got used to not going to school. But that's an interesting thing. You're saying that you think the kids that are actively engaged in extracurricular activities have a vested interest in going to school.
I think that's
a good point. I know my children were in sports, and gosh, it took an awful lot of time, but they loved it. And we went to all the games and everything like that. And I noticed the same for art or debate. That's a good point. Other than that, though, is there anything that the Senate can do right now? I mean, is this being discussed at all? Because if this continues, no wonder the test scores aren't going anywhere and going down.
Yeah, we're having a hearing today in just maybe about an hour and a half on a budget in finance, about a proposal of a bill of mine to get some money into some ideas and promoting schools coming up with creative, clever, witty, intelligent ideas on how to, get, carve into this absenteeism thing, because I know, and I know you know this, but if we don't give kids something constructive to do, they're going to find something destructive to do. And we really need to find them constructive, creative ways to want to go to school. And just like I said, to make them feel like they belong to something larger than themselves.
In your view, when a kid is out a week or 2 weeks, what did that do to your class, or what did that do to their track in your classroom?
Yeah, and I know I'm just one out of 880,000 teachers in Minnesota, but I know that I created an environment that kids couldn't afford to miss. The rigor was such that to miss one of my 90-minute classes was really tough to catch up. And I used humor. I know you probably find that hard to believe. But I used a lot of humor in my class because if you're enjoying the experience, you're more likely to come back. And so between a strong, rigorous curriculum and a little dab of humor from time to time, I think goes a far way in wanting kids to want to come back. And I think another issue is during COVID, school became less rigorous, only in that teachers were so overwhelmed. We were all overwhelmed. So we maybe gave a couple less assignments than we normally would have. And I think we're going to it'll take a while, but I just wanted to find out what schools are doing statewide to decrease absenteeism and reward them for that with some grant money. And so that's the plan for the bill today.
Okay, and that bill is in the Finance Committee. Well, thank you very much, Senator Cwodzinski. Really appreciate your input, and we'll be following the progress of that bill.
All right. Thanks, Esme, and you have a great day today.
Up next, Republican Senator Julia Coleman, the ranking Republican on the Senate Education Policy Committee. Well, joining us right now is Senator Julia Coleman. She is the lead Republican on the Senate Education Policy Committee. Senator Coleman, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. How big, I know you've been so vocal and expressing concerns about really the decline in test scores, graduation rates. This absenteeism problem, how big a deal do you think that is?
I think it's an issue that certainly was around before COVID, and COVID only seems to have exacerbated it. And if you were a student that was already struggling with it, it's only gotten that much worse since COVID, and it's something that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon.
What do you think can be done about it? Because obviously in some families, I'm guessing the Coleman family, when your boys, 3 boys are all in school, they'll be going to school. They won't be just hanging out somewhere, but what can be done about it? Do you have any ideas?
I think that's the multi-million-dollar question. We've seen record funding through Republican and Democrat-controlled legislatures the last 3 budget cycles go into our education system. At a certain point, we have to look around and say, what else needs to be done? Maybe we aren't the ones who can fully solve this problem. It's something that we have to be working with the local school districts, teachers, counselors, and most importantly, parents. I think you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely, my children will be in school, and I will make sure that they are in school. And if you don't have parents there enacting that, what can we do at the legislature? And so it's something that we just really have to collaborate all together holistically on.
But you don't think that the additional money that's been poured into education, which is enormous over the past few years, that that's the answer?
I certainly think that there's more that our school districts could be doing with those dollars. For example, last year, what I'm hearing from our school districts is it was great. You gave us, for example, $100, but then the legislature tied $150 of mandates, and they ended up worse off than before. So now they don't even have the resources available to get more counselors, to tackle this, to have those conversations with the parents, and have the time and the resources and the manpower to do that. And so I do think dollars can help, but we have to free them up so that the school districts, which are unique in every single part of the state, can uniquely tackle this issue.
Yeah, and I know obviously you've looked at the statistics. What's striking is that this really is a problem everywhere, and actually not just in Minnesota, but all across the country. and everybody has a stake on it. Do you find your constituents concerned about the education system, which obviously in Carver County is excellent, but are you hearing concerns about it?
Yes, I absolutely love the schools that I represent, but I hear from them every day at the legislature that they're struggling and they're worse off than before because we tied all those dollars to mandates. And so when you have wealthy school districts, which I represent a couple of them, saying we're in trouble, I can't even imagine what the other ones are going through. And it is an issue around the state, the absenteeism. And even if those students are in the actual building, I don't think they're actually going to class. I had a St. Paul middle school teacher in my office a few months ago that said after lunch, they're just roaming the halls. And I don't think their parents know how serious this is. So they may be physically in the building, but are they actually being educated? I think that's something that we have to look at as well.
All right. And actually, we did speak with John Choi, the Ramsey County attorney, who said exactly that a lot of them are physically in the school building, but not in class. Well, Senator Coleman, thank you so much. We really appreciate your input.
Thank you for having me.
And that does it for this edition of Talking Points. As always, please email me with comments and suggestions. The show airs every Wednesday and Thursday at 6:30 and 9:30 p.m. Every Friday, the show posts to YouTube for on-demand viewing. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.